Wild weekend, everybody. It's Jim and it is Matthew, and we are here to talk college and pro football. Matthew, you and I spoke earlier in the pre show, and you have some things you want to get off your chest. Go for it.
Yeah, my whole thing this entire weekend, and it's not that I disagree with it at its basis, is that these games with Indiana and Oregon are just really good, hard fought wins. They are, but according to everybody in the conference bias discussion, the games that the SEC has been playing in these close games, they were discounted. The SEC as a conference has been discounted for some of their top teams playing close games against teams that, by the way, if you look at the talent roster, just in terms of their blue chip percentage, is better than both of those teams that that gave both Oregon and Indiana their scares this weekend. So it's a one it's talking out of both sides of your mouth in terms of these people that are very much anti SEC, and that it comes across now as people that just hate the SEC because you've now thrown logic out of the window. We tossed that out a while back when you're telling me that Fernando Mendoza gave you a Heisman performance when he barely passed for 200 yards. He had one touchdown, one pick. Yes, I know he had a rushing touchdown to go along with it. And it wasn't a fantastic performance from Indiana as a whole or Oregon as a whole, but they were really good, hard-fought wins that they found a way to win.
Mm-hmm.
But as I've been told by the general populace, those are actually bad for your team and show as signs of weakness as they have all year for the teams in the SEC.
Well, that's basically crap. Here's the way you look at it, right? Is power rankings with regard to what the teams you lost to or who gave you the scare or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like Ken Palm in basketball.
Mm-hmm.
They give a ranking. Ken Palm doesn't care what, he doesn't even look at jerseys. It's it's what the talent is on the field at the time, or in Ken Palm's case on the court. I would say personally, in the rankings, as I quickly make a quick look here, I could see where that you could make an argument for any one of Texas A&M, even Alabama and Georgia being better than Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's long been a bias, specifically from the Big Ten, about, how they have their institutions. Their institutions are institutions of higher learning who, by the way, just happen to play sports.
Mm-hmm.
And the SEC is basically, the Andy Griffith version of college football.
Yep.
They're all dumb and they all can't play. It is an old and very worn out trope. The academic institutions in the South are just as good as the academic institutions in the Midwest and East. It's silly, to be honest. I think Oregon, at the end of the day, I think Oregon may end up being the best team in the conference, to be honest. And Oregon 2 years ago was in the Pac-12. So how many years have we heard? This goes all the way back to when I started covering college. It was, and they made the joke about themselves. Okay, the Big Ten used to be called the Big Two and the Little Eight. It was either Ohio State or Michigan traded off year after year after year winning. Now somebody might sneak in, like in Iowa once or twice. Mm-hmm. Or somebody like Illinois, or when Mike White was coaching in Illinois, when Hayden Fry was coaching out in Iowa, they'd get their time, but it was for the most part Ohio State and Michigan dominated, mm-hmm. And that wasn't the case in the Southeastern Conference. You've always had competition in the Southeastern Conference, no matter how good Alabama was. Mm-hmm. There was always somebody. Maybe Alabama won the championship, but a Georgia, a Florida, or Tennessee,
LSU, Auburn.
LSU, they were always in the conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't get that. I mean, basically, even the eye test will tell you, if you're just watching the game and you don't have no rooting interest in the game, right? You'll say that, these teams have a tremendous, they just have the Southeastern Conference has always had better athletes than Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
And as a matter of fact, most of the skill positions that Ohio State and Michigan have come from the South.
Mm-hmm.
So, you can argue that thing all you want to, but at the end of the day, it just doesn't hold water.
Yeah. And here's where your argument for the Big Ten goes to die in terms of like conference dominance as a whole. The bottom third of the Big Ten, and I'm not this isn't exact. This is me just kind of remembering it off the top of my head because I read it this weekend. The bottom third of the Big Ten is 3-31 in conference games this year.
Mm-hmm.
The 3 wins came against other teams in the bottom third of the Big Ten.
Right.
That is not indicative of a top to bottom conference strength.
No.
And so but here's the thing is the general populace has created this narrative that the SEC has this large bias, right? But they've also created that at the end of the year when the SEC gets more teams in, that's something that you created yourself because you wanted the larger college football playoff model. And when you get to that larger college football playoff model, you have these groups of teams, especially on the back end of that 8 to 12 range, that are going to look very similar. And we'll probably have a group of 2 lost teams and 8, maybe even 3 lost teams, just depending on how the season shakes out on that back end of things. And what you do when you have that group of teams is you have to go to analytics. Like you talked about with Ken Palm. Nobody gets upset when it comes to the NCAA. I mean, obviously, people will have their quarrels with maybe where their team's ranked or something.
Sure.
But it's understanding that these teams are ranked by analytics. Like these teams are ranked analytically. And when you do that, you get to the analytics on the backside because you have to get to the analytics on the backside. Otherwise, there's no deciphering factor between some of these teams. And when you do that, the analytics are going to favor the SEC every time. The same way that the NFL draft favors the SEC and recruiting classes favor the SEC and every publication apparently favors the SEC. Like this is a big ploy by everybody in football apparently to prop the SEC up. And that's just not the case. It's a case of people that have created something in their minds and everything they see that goes against it, they ignore, and everything they see that goes for it, they prop up.
They amplify it.
Confirmation bias. So it's an issue because I saw it again. People talk about ESPN and College Game Day and how they have an SEC bias. Well, I'll tell you this: I was watching the Indiana Penn State game, and I was listening to the halftime show, and they go into halftime, and they're sending it to commercial break, and as they send it to commercial break, they kind of give you a preview of the games they're gonna hit on next in the halftime show. And so they toss up the Georgia and the Mississippi State game, and they say, and the banner says upset alert with a question mark. It was up somewhere in the neighborhood of 28-7 in that game at the time of throwing that banner up. And then following it for the Ohio State Purdue game, they said Ohio statement. Meanwhile, the headline read Ohio statement, which I wouldn't have an issue with if the time that they shown it, Ohio State wasn't down 3-0 to Purdue.
Let me just see. And that was you were watching the Fox or the ESPN game?
The Fox.
Okay.
Let me turns it around. Same way.
Let me we'll go behind the ropes here. There's a tremendous amount of pressure and messaging from all the conferences. I mean, we're not going to play favorites here. We're just going to say it is what it is. The Big Ten had a battle with ESPN. They were basically saying that ESPN really um, didn't didn't put them in the same level, frankly, as the SEC. Um, and so that's how the SEC got blocked out. I mean, let's be honest here. CBS, NBC, um, and Fox all ended up with the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm.
You don't think ESPN wanted anything on that deal? They had a 20-year deal with the Big 12. I'm sorry, the Big Ten. But at the time, the presidents and the athletic directors they were honestly pissed at the network. So they're going to go screw it. We have no trouble selling our content. ESPN on the other side has had a long-standing relationship with the Southeastern Conference. It's been a good relationship. It's been one that's been beneficial to both of them, and so they is that bad? No. Is it programming and how that you do it? You're going to prop up your programming versus the other team's program. I mean, the other network's program. That is old as as television itself. But that's how it normally works. See, Sean is there. You want to see if he wants to drop by for a second?
Sure.
Hey, Sean. Hey, Sean.
Hey, how's it going?
Fine.
Just wanted to jump in here for a couple of seconds and see. Just posted Mark Eccles notes for the week on Sports Talk Florida, and CJ Gardner Johnson tanks. He puts Brian Daboll on gardening leave.
Yeah. We haven't got where we were still in college, but yeah, Brian is no longer there.
College, man, nobody's ain't good except for Ohio State.
Ooh.
And maybe Texas Tech. No, not Texas Tech.
Texas Tech isn't bad.
Not Texas A&M. Texas A&M is very good.
Yes, they are. They're very good. There cannot be any doubt about that. Let me ask you this question. You brought up the Giants.
Mm-hmm.
What are they going to do? I mean, with the Mariners, the Mariners have been a little since they lost a couple of their head coaches. It's been like they've been through 4 coaches since they've been quality team. So where do they go from here?
Well, I just think they got you get an early start on finding someone now.
Interviewing, yeah.
Get rid of the coach early, and you can't let you're running Jackson Dart into the ground. I think that more than anything. I mean, people were getting worried about his. You got to be a little bit cautious with this guy. He's going to be your franchise quarterback. You don't have a line. You don't have you're out there kind of getting him hurt and stuff, and I think you got to be a little bit more cautious with that. But I don't know where they go with it because maybe I know. Look, at the earlier you do it, you just play interim. They're not very good. They don't need a quarterback obviously next year, so they get they get a high pick. They can get a defensive player or offensive line or whatever. But you just get somebody and you have you get to talk to these people early, I think, and kind of see who wants the job. I mean, it's a big job, obviously. I mean, they weren't a couple years ago. 3 years ago, they're pretty good. They made playoffs and they've been bad since, but. They if this guy Dart is the quarterback, then you got your guy, so you go from there.
Well, they also were hamstrung when Scatterboo got hurt.
Yeah. I mean that's to go along with Malik Neighbors tearing his ACL in what I think was week 4 earlier this year.
Yeah, so this is a dead year at this point. I mean, but they have the parts. I think.
They've got the people to do it to get back, especially that south of Philly, basically. Washington's having trouble, and the Giants, are hurt. They're banged up. Washington's banged up. Dallas is Dallas. So right now Philly's just got all they have to do is play 500 ball the rest of the way, and they got no problems.
Yeah, I will say they need to they probably need to fire their GM as well. Like when you're rotating through coaches, eventually we got to start looking at roster construction and understand that that's not the coach's fault. They drafted Kayvon Thibodeau high, and then they turn around, they draft Abdul Carter high. They've spent a lot of their first round picks on defensive line guys, and their defensive line hasn't played great. Jackson Dart was Daboll's pick. Schoen may get credit for it, but you go look at their inside show, and it's Daboll that's pushing for Jackson Dart, and
right.
Schoen's sitting there. He's like, I don't know, man, it's a reach. Finally, he gets convinced into doing it. Luckily for them, but that wasn't his pick. It wouldn't have been his pick if it was just up to him. So I think they probably need to move at general manager as well.
Normally, if you're smart, that's what you do. You clean it all out.
Because
bringing another coach to fit with the general manager, that doesn't always work.
Yeah, it's tough to make it work because the general manager probably feels like it's a disconnect. When you come in together, you feel like you're kind of fighting together. When you come into a situation where same old GM, new head coach, given seemingly the same opportunity that all the other ones have been given with the same guy running the roster. At a certain point, the roster not getting any better isn't because you're not developing or you're not coaching correctly. It's because you're not picking the right guys and signing the right guys.
Mike Kafka, the guy who's taking the interim job, he might be the guy.
Maybe.
I mean, because he's done pretty well with the offense. He's taken a lot, and they took. Was it GM or the ownership that decided to take a walk on Saquon Barkley?
That was ownership. It was a little bit of both, but if I remember correctly, the executive call fell onto the ownership. They said when I obviously there's video record of it, but they called Saquon in. They said, "Listen, Saquon, like we want you to go out." They told him to essentially go out and test the market, and once he had tested the market, come back to them with the best offer, and kind of see where they went from there. He came back with the best offer. The Giants didn't want to match that offer. I believe that call came from ownership. And you've got video of the owner sitting in Schoen's office going, if he goes to Philly, I'm going to be sick, and that's where he ended up going. So that's on them because they didn't want to invest in a running back that they saw as an aging asset with an injuring history, and didn't think it was best for their team long term. So every decision that they've made, whether it come from the top, in the middle, or down to the head coach, has just been the wrong decision for a very long time since really Tom Coughlin left.
So you got Schoen is going to be looking for the new coach according to Mara and Tisch. So we know the general manager ain't going anywhere. So good luck and Godspeed. I don't know where who's going to take that job.
And if you want a really good example of things not like it being an organizational problem, Daniel Jones is having no issues in Indianapolis right now. That is an 8-2 football team. Now, I know they have Jonathan Taylor. That's fine. You had Saquon Barkley there. So, you can look and see pretty similar parallels that it's probably a Giants problem and not a people that are in the Giants building problem.
Funny little anecdote here for trivia buffs. The Maras, actually two of the Mara family, are married to the Rooneys. So the Steelers and the Giants ownership groups are bound by marriage.
Wow.
So,
it's impressive given the success that the Steelers are able to really sustain year in and year out. You'd think maybe they'd say, hey, help us out a little bit, in-laws. But
it's funny because Dan Rooney, if you remember when Plexico Burress played for the Steelers, and he went over to New York, and he was shopping himself to the Giants and the Jets. And it was Dan Rooney who called Mara up and said, "Look, you want no part of this guy." And he ended up with the Jets. So, I think they try to look out for each other. I don't think they're trying to help each other, but also at the same time, that'd be a very interesting Thanksgiving Day table, I'll tell you, with that two group in hand. But let's sneak back to college real quick. So that got a little off track there, but Sean had something he wanted to talk about, which is cool. We're happy to do it. Rankings wise, I was looking at the rankings, and like I said, I could see Texas A&M. The 1, 2, 3, 3 of the top 5 are SEC teams, and 2 obviously are Big Ten. And
with
so 3
sitting on the outside as well.
Yeah, you got Oregon there at 7, and Tech at 8. Notre Dame shouldn't be ranked that high. 9. Texas is in the 10 spot. I don't know how in the world do you decide or make an argument that the SEC is weaker when the SEC dominates the top 15 spots in the poll.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just something that people have kind of dug their heads in. They got behind it because the Big Ten plays 9 conference games. Okay,
so what?
If 5 of those 9 conference games are the bottom third of your conference, then it doesn't matter because those games might as well be G5 games. I mean, just flat out honest. The bottom of the Big Ten is not good at all. The middle of the Big
G5
Ten,
teams that can beat the bottom of the Big Ten.
Oh yeah. I mean, there are some of these teams in the bottom of the Big Ten, like genuinely the bottom of the Big Ten, that if you went and stuck them in the American or the Mountain West, like they're not winning that conference.
Was it Tulane that beat Northwestern?
Yeah, Tulane handled Northwestern. And I mean, Northwestern has been one of the Big Ten's better teams.
At times, yeah.
Yeah, like they've got a couple of solid wins. So, it's such a tired argument that doesn't have a lot of basis in fact and more basis in feeling that people just continue to perpetuate. And it just drives me crazy because you don't really have a leg to stand on. SEC's moving 9 conference games. The Big Ten got what they wanted, and that scheduling change from that side of things. So I don't know. I don't see where people just continue to build this narrative because it's just not there unless you are just searching for it, which people are.
Okay, so how does Pittsburgh get ranked 23rd, and then you've got Virginia and Louisville at 20 and 19?
Yeah, that I don't know. The ACC's giving it their best shot to see if we can't find another group of 6 conference champion to put in over them. It's a bad league that has once again capsized on itself. Last year they were able to get 2 teams in because SMU went on that magical run and then ultimately lost to Clemson, in the ACC title. And what SMU had done throughout the year was good enough to get into the playoff. They had 2 teams last year. That's not going to happen again.
Right.
The top of this league, you look at it, you go, okay, who is the top team? Is it Miami with 2 losses that, just given day, they could show up and look like the worst team in the country? Is it that group in Louisville and Virginia? Is it a Pittsburgh team that since they started their backup has looked significantly better than when Eli Holstein was under center? I think that's probably your answer, and they've got a really, really fun game this weekend against Notre Dame.
Yeah, and I think that from my standpoint, okay, I'm going to throw a theory out here and tell me what you think. Everybody and grandmother had FSU and Clemson going to other conferences, Miami was in that conversation. Carolina was in that conversation. Um, and both Miami and Clemson are going to have to fight hard to become bowl eligible.
Yeah.
If you take those two off the top, right, where they usually have been for years,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of feel that because of the rest of the parity of the rest of the conference, that they may not be playing bad football. It's just that you haven't. These are not names that are household names because you look at the ACC and the first two names you automatically go after are Clemson and FSU, but that doesn't mean that, for that matter, Louisville isn't a good football team. Pittsburgh isn't a good football team. Virginia is not a good football team. It just means that they don't have the history and pedigree of FSU and Clemson, or at least pedigree of the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting here looking at the standings, and the ACC has a problem right now. 5-4 Duke is their second place team. They've got a collection of 4 that are all 5-1 in conference. Duke's 4-1 in conference, so they have a collection of 5 teams that have 1 conference loss.
Right.
That's a problem because the highest ranking team is Virginia at 14, who's sure to fall.
Right.
Then you got Georgia Tech at 17, who was idle this past weekend. Pitt and SMU are the other 2 5-1 teams, but you look across that, Georgia Tech's the only one that's got 1 loss on their schedule. Everybody else has multiple losses, so there's just not. And Georgia Tech has that 1 loss, and they're still ranked 17th. So what they've done and who they've played, they haven't looked great against who they've played all the time, and who they've played haven't been great all around. So they don't have the analytic. We talked about it earlier, talking about how the analytics factor into that back end of the playoff. They don't have the analytics necessary to be able to make the playoff, save a conference championship.
Right.
So there's just not a shot for the ACC to get 2 teams in. They have to get a team in that they think can even really do a competent job at this point. I mean, people talk about, they make fun of the SEC. They're like, well, the SEC made a call or the Big Ten made a call, and some of these late season upsets that end up to not to be. If I was the ACC commissioner and that was something that I was actually considering, I would have made the call Saturday night in one of the in either Louisville or Virginia, because, man, if I wanted to keep my hopes alive, they died with those 2 teams on Saturday night.
Yeah, I think I don't know that Jim Phillips has got that juice to pick up the phone and call him and say, do me a favor, one of you guys have got a tank so we can get one of you in. You just talked about Notre Dame Pitt coming up this weekend. Notre Dame can't afford a 3rd loss.
No.
And Pitt can't either. So it'll be good. A lot of people this
okay, hang on. I am gonna pause you on Pitt can't afford a 2nd loss. They can't. This is not a conference game. They're still 5-1 in conference. So
that's true. I forgot. That's right. You're right.
Yeah, they'll control their own destiny in terms of conference wins and making it to that title game.
Yeah, but if they lose, they're ranked 23rd. If they lose to Notre Dame, they'll fall out of the top 25. Which is going to hurt them. They're going to hurt them in the CFP rankings. So, no, you're right. You're right on the. I mean, they could still come back and win the ACC championship, but it wouldn't be an optically good look.
No.
Notre Dame and Pitt have played 90 times. Or I'm sorry, 75 times.
Oh, that's
back in the day when they were both independents, Pitt and Notre Dame was an annual, ritual. And they played. The interesting thing coming up this week, or coming up last week when they played Navy. Navy is the one team that's played Notre Dame more than any other team in the country. 93 times Notre Dame and the Naval Academy got together. So there you go. And information you don't necessarily need, but there it is. Oklahoma travels to Alabama this week.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Alabama, you remember this is a really good football game.
Mhm.
But you remember what they did to you last year. Um, in the era that we're in, it's obviously a very different football team that they're playing this weekend. But
Mhm.
last year, Oklahoma was the team that ended Alabama's season. They
Right.
handed them that third loss, and they handed it to them rather emphatically. If I remember correctly, Alabama only scored 3 points on the road in Oklahoma. So, if I'm Kalen DeBoer, that's got to be something that's kind of and that Alabama team as a whole. That's something that's sitting in the back of my mind because a lot of those players were there last year. Think of Jam Miller, Ty Simpson, Jeremy Bernard, Ryan Williams. All those guys were on the team when they got shut out really in Norman. So they're going to have their work cut out for them. I would anticipate um, that Alabama shows up and is the same Alabama team that we've seen. But there's a trend that I've been noticing, and it's every time you hear these whispers from Alabama about how great a week of practice they had
Yeah.
because it happened this past week. They're
Right.
like based on what I was hearing, like everything it's you take Alabama and lay the points, and they did cover. They won by 11. It wasn't impressive. That wasn't a really impressive win from Alabama. They were unable to run the football completely against
Mhm.
LSU this past weekend. But even though they've came out flat every time that report comes out, so you better hope that there's no report that says Alabama has had a really really good or really intense week of practice because generally that's a recipe for disaster for the Crimson Tide.
Well, speaking of fun weekends, you got one coming up in this weekend in your neck of the woods. Texas comes to Georgia. I think this is an opportunity for the dogs to shut everybody up.
Yeah, it is. Little heartbroken. One of my best friends is getting engaged. Or oh, pause. Sorry, I have a prior engagement that I have to tend to this weekend.
Ah, family affair.
But yeah, but no, it's going to be a good one. Georgia's defense last weekend, I was really impressed with. This is
Hmm.
a scheme that Kirby Smart's familiar with. Jeff Lebby was a coach that Kirby Smart was familiar with. I honestly had put Georgia on upset alert throughout the entirety of last week, and that's mainly because of the way they played. Like they didn't deserve to not be put on upset alert the way they had played in most of their games. But they came out, they gave up a touchdown on the first drive, and then the defense settled in, and they played honestly what I think has been their best conference game on defense all year. CJ Allen looks fantastic. Raylan Wilson looks great. They do a really good job of stopping the run. In terms of this weekend, when it comes to Texas, they played twice last year, and that was Texas's two worst offensive games. Kirby
Hmm.
Smart is very familiar with this Texas defense and knows how, or with this Texas offense, and knows how to game plan for it. It's an offense that you can game plan. It's predicated around wide zone, and if they are not able to run the football, and that environment gets to him, Arch Manning is in for a reversion to what we saw at the start of the season. Everybody's been impressed with him the last couple of games. He's thrown for 300 plus in back-to-back games, with that being at Mississippi State and at home against Vanderbilt. They had last week off. He's looked better, but if there's a defense and an atmosphere that's able to revert him back to what we saw in Columbus, Ohio, it'll be this Saturday in Athens.
Well, if you're Kirby, right, why wouldn't you know, stack the box and say, okay, Arch, you got to beat me?
And that's what they're going to do. They're going to play. They're going to send a lot of pressures from their corners and their safeties. That's what they like to do out of what they call their mint front, which is three down linemen with an
Hmm.
edge kind of standing up, and they do that so that edge can drop and that
Right.
safety or corner, whoever's playing the star, can bring pressure, and you just kind of don't really have a great idea of who's coming on
Hmm.
some of those simulated pressures. It's something that if you go back and you turn on 2022 Tennessee, that's how they won that football game, was their simulated pressures
Hmm.
out of that look. So they're going to play a lot of zone, and they're going to make Arch Manning layer his throws.
Which, if that's the case, then it'd be a long day for him.
Mm-hmm. It will. He came in the game both times against Georgia last year. The first game, he had a little more of an extended stay than the SEC championship, but he didn't look good in his time when he started in Austin last year. So, now they have what is it, 8 games worth of tape on him. They've got
Yep.
plenty of tape. They know his tendencies. They're able to see the tape of when he's felt good and the things that have gotten him comfortable, because there are plays. There are things that Texas does repeatedly to get Arch Manning in the flow of the game. It's not a state secret what they like to do and what he likes to do.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a second about some weekend changes which may or may not stick. DJ Langaway got benched in the game against Kentucky,
Mm-hmm.
and basically they came out in the press conference this morning and said that he will go against Ole Miss this week.
Mm-hmm.
Nussbaum at LSU gets benched. They haven't decided what they're going to do with him yet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking if I'm DJ, I'm leaving Florida at the end of this year.
Yeah, I think DJ was there because of Billy Napier.
Yeah.
Obviously, his development has not gone the way they would like it. They would have liked it to at Florida up until this point. They just I guess that Florida team just must have spent the entire week reading or listening to or hanging out with their fans, who all they could do was bitch and moan about the outcome of the week prior, because they forgot to show up on Saturday, and they got it handed to them by a Kentucky offense that had no business putting up 31 points on that defense, but they did anyways. That is a team that quit. They quit in Lexington this weekend. And there's no measuring stick that you can't measure quit or buy-in. That's not something you can do. But you turn on that football game and that Florida team quit. And I don't know if it was something that resonated throughout the building based on the results last weekend. I don't really know, but what I will say is that all I've seen is either Florida fans complaining about the game against Georgia or telling Ole Miss fans how they're going to take Lane Kiffin. Well, guess what? You got to go play Lane Kiffin this weekend, and you were the team that ruined his team's playoff chances last year as well. Similar storyline to Oklahoma and Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be an Ole Miss team that probably wants some blood based on the results last year. And in terms of LSU, that one I really don't understand. I mean, Garrett Nussmeier has battled it out all year this year. You didn't get a spark from Van Buren when he went in the football game. Nussmeier wasn't hurt. I'm not a fan of benching Nussmeier after all he's given to LSU, especially throughout this year, and what has just been an awful offensive line. I mean, just awful. So I didn't love that one. I guess I understand the Florida one. That's an interim coach trying something, that works. And Lagway isn't a guy who's done after this year. Nussmeier's done after this year.
Right.
Going to the NFL, I would assume that he'll still get a shot in the NFL. But he came back and he came back with the intent of winning a national title, and the offensive line that LSU staff gave him just was never going to get the job done.
No, I think the situation with DJ is, if you look at it, a little parallel here for a second, a little pivot. Quarterbacks make very good golfers, and the reason is that they basically, have the ability to shut things off, right? A bad shot, you got to forget about the bad shot and work on the shot you got in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think where DJ is got a golf head at this point, he's got the yips. He can't throw the ball. I mean, this is somebody who could complete, pretty much any one of the passes that he needs to complete. Now he can't hit a guy 5 yards ahead of him. He'll throw over him. He'll throw short. It's just a situation from my, at least vantage point, is it now Langaway's It's his head. He's got to get. So. To me, the reason I'm saying he's got to get out of Florida is he doesn't know what the hell he's supposed to be doing.
Yeah,
He's so screwed up. He can't perform.
And I will say that is 100% on this Florida coaching staff. I don't know. I don't know if Billy was in charge of the quarterbacks as well. I don't know who their quarterbacks coach is there. You know, I'd say probably more than Billy Napier. Whoever the quarterbacks coach is, it needs to be fired as well. Like that should have been a move that was made in conjunction with the firing of Billy Napier, because they've done DJ Lagway a disservice in terms of his development. Now, he serves some of his own personal responsibility and not catching this and working on it, but they highlighted it in the Georgia game, and that's his timing. How long it takes him to take his drop. He is too slow in his drop. He does not get the ball out on time. That didn't change in that Georgia game. That didn't change this weekend at Kentucky. It's a disservice to him. It really is, because he's a talented quarterback. He's, all the arm talent in the world. I think he's probably really good between the ears as well. But they have not fixed that little mechanical issue. Like it's a small mechanical issue that you would think should be a relatively simple fix in terms of just speeding things up, but they haven't. Nothing has changed, because it's not something that he wasn't doing last year. He probably was doing it last year. He just probably was a little more in rhythm and feeling himself. He was a freshman. He just go out there and plays for us. They had nothing to lose at that point in time. This year he came in with all the expectations, and he just hasn't lived up to them, because teams have the ability to game plan for him, and they see that weakness that he has on film.
Yeah, and that in the fact that mentally, he's screwed up. He just, he's so afraid of making a mistake that he will make mistakes.
Yep, and that's where you get the overthrows and the underthrows aren't stuff that comes with timing. It can come with timing, but that's much more of you're thinking about, like, I need to put this ball in my receiver's numbers. Like you're thinking about, like, oh God, what if I don't make this throw? So the overthrows and underthrows are probably largely to do with the yips.
Yeah. That's why I was saying about the golf situation. It's, once it gets in your head, it's going to be pretty hard to get out of it.
Yep. Yeah. Once it gets in, as someone who is god awful at golf, but apparently I can get worse. When I'm at my worst, it feels like it's never going to end. And you hear golfers talk about that all the time. You're in a bad spot in terms of golf. You feel like it's like, am I ever going to get where I was back?
Right.
He has the talent. He has the ability to get back to where he was. I think he just needs a fresh start.
Yeah, and I think he'll get it. I think he'll leave. One other thing about Florida while we're here, and this is kind of emblematic of what we've been talking about coaching, and we've been talking about wasting of talent and whatever you want to go with it. Right now, as you and I are talking, only Miami and USF are assured of bowls. Now, there was a time when all of those teams would have been in a bowl, and actually, if you were just bowl eligible at Florida or Florida State, it'd get you fired. And FSU has to win out to make a bowl, and that's not going to happen. Florida almost has to win out to make a bowl, and that's likely not going to happen. UCF, same situation. That's where we are in the state of Florida. When at the end of the day, they used to have 3 teams battling for national championships.
Yeah, and they have. There was a point earlier in the year where Miami, USF, Florida, and Florida State were all 4 ranked. They talked about, and the headlines were like, look at the strength of football in Florida right now. Like, football in Florida is seemingly back. These teams are rolling. You got good football across the state. And then, with the exception of pretty much USF, everybody has just crumbled. I mean, I guess you can go back and forth as to whether or not you want to describe Miami as crumbling. I do. The situation they're in versus the expectations that they had set on them early in the year after they won the games that they did against Notre Dame and really getting that hot start and handling their business in the fashion that they handled. I mean, they blew out USF, and that was a USF team that was coming off an upset of Florida, a ranked Florida team at that point. So it was expected. I mean, USF's quality of team hasn't changed at all, so that was still a really good win for them. But in terms of what they've done since then, they have crumbled. So you're looking at a situation now where USF is really the only team capable of representing the state of Florida in the college football playoff this year,
which is amazing. I mean, I'll take it if we get there, but at the end of the day, you just sit there and go, there are a lot of really good Florida athletes on those teams. And it's funny, Alex Golish at South Florida has been very good at picking off players from other schools in the state of Florida or, maybe in the Midwest, and say, look, you're not playing as much as you'd like to. If you come back home, you can play. And that's helped their offense, but Lord Almighty, it helped the defense because Todd Orlando went out and just picked off kids from SEC schools, from Big Ten schools, he went around the country saying, I need these linebackers, bing, 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 and he hit on all of them. Now, that being said, you can't do that every year.
Nope.
But if you build a program where people like it and want to stay, then you know what? They'll stay.
Yep. I mean,
and I think that's the problem that Florida and Florida State has had in these years is, yes, we're keeping the talent in the state, but we're screwing up their ability to climb that draft board because we're just not getting the job done. And to your point on Mario and Miami, we jokingly said, or I won't put you in this because I don't know if you agree. So, but jokingly said that Mario's going to lose you 3 games. He's going to coach his way out of 3 games this year. So far, he's done 2.
Yep.
Those are not games they should have lost, and he screwed that up.
Yeah. The tweet that I put out after SMU after SMU beat Miami is, I don't know if you've seen that clip from The Simpsons where Bart has to write the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
In like 6 lines. Mario Cristobal will not fool me next year. Repeated it because I'm not going to let him fool me next year. I'm not going to get to game 5 and have Miami be 5-0 with one of the top transfer quarterbacks, and he's playing and he's looking good. And maybe their defense and their receivers are looking good again next year. But in order for me to buy in for Mario Cristobal in Miami in the future, just in general, is I need to see them make it to the end of the season and still be in contention. And when I say in contention, I mean just make the playoff in general, because Miami is the best team in the ACC talent, hands down, bar none. I have no questions about that. Is the best talent roster in the ACC, but they're not the best team because for all of Mario Cristobal's recruiting, and he has some good coordinators on his staff, they cannot keep that team together for the entirety of a season. And I don't get it.
We all know that there are coaches who are good game coaches and terrible recruiters. We also know that there are coaches and a guy who falls into this category, and a poor guy had, I don't know, I want to say 4 or 5 coaching jobs, probably 2 or 3 of them were interim. Randy Shannon, that's a name out of the past. Randy was on Jimmy's staff in Miami, Jimmy Johnson's staff. And Randy was basically the guru. He recruited Miami. There was a kid that got out of county, limits until they talked to Randy Shannon. And he did that. He went to Florida. He brought kids there for urban. He went over to UCF and got guys for the first incarnation of God, who's the coach over at there now? He was at Nebraska. Scott Frost.
Mhm.
Went and got Scott Frost player. So I mean, Randy Shannon has been the conduit to a number of coaches to bring the top talent from Florida to, or at least South Florida for that matter, to wherever he ends up. And 9 times out of 10 so far, it hasn't panned out because he brings them there, but they don't. They buy into what Randy's pitching, but they don't buy into the fact that once they get there, that they're either going to play or the person who is running a show is going to get them to the point where they're going to be good at what they do. And I think that's the sad part about Mario is he is such a good recruiter.
Mm-hmm.
But literally losing games by just dumb play, everything from poor clock management to poor calling of offensive and defensive plays when you have the game to win. It's there for you and you give it away.
Yeah, I would akin Mario Cristobal's teams to that of there's a couple out there. I think lion might be your most popular answer of animals that when they eat they relax. Miami ate up that first part of their schedule, and they did it last year. They ate and then they relaxed on the back end of that schedule, and they got twice. Last year and this year. So how do they weed out that complacency moving forward? I'm not even talking about the end of next year. How does Mario Cristobal? Because I don't think that his culture is bad there by any measures, and we know.
No, you're right.
But how do you weed that out? How do you fix this problem? It's becoming a trend, is what it is. So. I think he's going to have some questions that he has to answer, not in terms of his job security, but just in terms of trying to figure out a different way to do things next year, because it's obvious that what they did last year and what they've done this year have not worked for the entirety of a season. They worked for 6 games, if that. They worked for 5 or 6 games, but those last 6 or 7 of them, it just doesn't.
No. And you got to wonder, what kind of, is DJ Langaway going to end up with Mario Cristobal? And I say that only because Mario has been a master at grabbing, other people's quarterbacks. And in fairness, they don't do poorly when they're down there.
No,
it's everything around them that falls apart, not the player.
Yeah, I mean, as much as a decent portion of like in the 2 games they lost, Carson Beck threw 4 interceptions against Louisville. Probably should have been 5. But again, they're driving late in that football game against Louisville. And in fairness to Carson, I don't agree with him getting up to the podium and saying so explicitly. But that was a miscommunication. That was the wrong route by the receiver. It just was. So that's not really on him. And then you go back to that interception he threw in overtime against SMU that handed SMU the football game. That was a bad route by Tony. Tony pushed that route upfield in a way that he shouldn't have, and it cost him. So,
well, then if you remember that the other interception that went off the guy's hands. So what do? You hit him in the hands. The worst place to hit him, I guess, huh?
Yeah, it's hard to place a lot of the blame on the quarterback, although he hasn't been the same guy that he was against Notre Dame for every game this year, which is, by the way, an unreasonable expectation if you expect a player to come out and look like their best version every single time they play. That's just not reality. But he hasn't looked bad, and so in the games that they've lost and some of those crucial turnovers, they
Mhm.
haven't all been on him. Maybe people say that is like making excuses because excuses were made last year, but they were reasonable ones as well for Carson Beck.
Right. All right, let's fly over real quick to the NFL. Um, two things will make you happy. Well, one will make you happy, the other not so much. I check with the NFL, um, my guys there, and they tell me that while they the league is interested in the Monday night doubleheaders, the
Mhm.
Players Association is not. So they're not going to push for it. They're going to let that one go.
Mhm.
But the trade-off becomes a large package of games, perhaps as many as 8 to 10. I'm guessing more 8 that
Mhm.
will be played out of the country.
Yeah.
They like this 9:30 thing, and you were, I assume, up on 8:30 to watch 9:30, I guess, to watch the Falcons this week. And
I sure
if
was.
you were, I apologize for ruining what could have been a good sleep.
Yeah. What's it called? I will say it was funny. One of my friends texted me, said, "Guess who gets to play Jonathan? Guess who got to play Jonathan Taylor this week in fantasy?" He said he'd lost his fantasy matchup before the 1 p.m. slate of games started because the Falcons let Jonathan Taylor go for 244 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns.
Right.
No, I put out a write up on Sports Talk Georgia, really going through that game, and
Mm-hmm.
it's now one where now you're on a 4 game skid if you're the Falcons. And it's now one where as much as I don't like to do it, you really do need to start asking questions about Raheem Morris
Mm-hmm.
and the way this team is coached because they just cannot find a way to win football games. I was sitting there and I was sitting thinking late in the fourth quarter after Tyler Algier scored that touchdown. I was like, put him up 10 and I was like, man, like this is where the Falcons bucked the trend. It's like
Mm-hmm.
the Colts scored, they brought it back within one. They answered with a touchdown. Like it feels like they've kind of found a way to win. And then Colts go down the field. The last 2 drives the Colts have, they're able to tie it up.
Mm-hmm.
They end up losing in overtime. If you had to guess how many yards between their last drive in the fourth quarter and their drive in overtime, how many
Mm-hmm.
yards do you think the Falcons gained over those 2 drives?
It would be a guess. I'm going to go 50.
They gained negative 23 yards over their last 2 drives of
What?
that game. Um,
With
it, it
sacks, huh?
yeah, it's something too where they got the football in the fourth that last drive in the fourth quarter where they
Mm-hmm.
gained, if I remember correctly, I think they gained negative what was it negative 15 yards on that drive.
Yeah.
Um, it was one that they were in position for, like where they got their kick return out to. They
Mm-hmm.
still had, I think, one timeout left. They had a legitimate shot to attempt to get into field goal range, and they didn't. And they get the football first in overtime. And, they have their opportunity, and you go negative 7 yards on that drive, and you give it up to Jonathan Taylor. It's just they are finding ways to lose football games in the most odd of fashions. They won the turnover battle. They recovered a fumble and picked off Daniel Jones once. Meanwhile, the Falcons lost one fumble, but they were still 2-1. Oh, by the way, the Falcons turned them over on downs twice in that football game. So you win the turnover battle, and your kicker goes out there. He's playing fine. Your special teams has played fairly well, aside from the returns that they're giving up to the Colts. You've had a trend here when the Falcons have lost football games. They haven't really been able to run the football in those games that they've lost. That wasn't an issue yesterday. They had 140 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns. They were averaging about 5 yards a carry. So it's just puzzling. Michael Penix is now 0-5 in games not played in a dome as the starting quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons. That continues. Raheem Morris is like 32-53 as a head coach now in the NFL. And it's just something that if you're the Falcons, who again they got a big day from Drake London too. It
Mm-hmm.
seems like everything that they needed to go right to win the football game happened, and they didn't. And at this point, it comes down to you just cannot close the game.
So at the end of the season, now again, I'm like you. I'm not really. I don't like to fire coaches, but I was curious, and I'm a big fan of Raheem Morris. I like Raheem. He's a good guy.
Yep.
You'd be hard pressed to find a nicer and better, X's and O's guy on defense than he is.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, with the trend being going to either offensive guys or young guys, or both young guys and offensive guys, I thought that the hiring of Raheem Morris at the beginning was kind of a weird hire because he hadn't had success anywhere they had been.
No, yeah, and I also think it's an interesting note just coming from that game on Sunday. Before the Colts hired Shane Steichen, they interviewed Raheem Morris, and they chose to go with Shane Steichen. So that's it. The Colts had a chance, they passed. Now they're better off for it. So it's something that is not it's not something you can fix this year. They're at home this week against the Panthers, who just lost 17-7 to arguably the worst team in football in the New Orleans Saints. And they're a team that blew the Falcons out 30-0 in Carolina earlier this year. So if they lose this football game on Sunday, at home indoors against a still not a great football team, 5-5 Carolina is, then that would probably be the loss. I think that might signal the end of the time of Raheem Morris's time in Atlanta.
But Fontenot, the general manager, I think his name's Terry.
It is.
Yeah. You look at it and you wonder, again, we had this a few minutes ago, the Giants. Maybe I'm better if I just clean house and bring in, new people, and just start from scratch, because Fontenot hasn't hit on a coach yet.
Yeah.
So how many opportunities are you going to give the guy to come through when in fact he hasn't proven that he can come through at all yet?
Yeah, I mean, listen. He's done a pretty good job in terms of drafting.
He's done a fantastic job of drafting.
Yeah, they have the talent. I mean, their defense is number one in the league, or not number one, but they were
in the top 5.
Yeah, towards the top end of the league in terms of passing defense. They were 23rd in rushing defense coming into Sunday. So he's built a good roster. Like you look at the offensive side of the football. Bijan Robinson, Drake London are two of the best at their positions. So he's done a good job of building the talent. But it doesn't matter if you build a correct talent roster if you can't hire the right head coach. And that's something that he's 0 for 2 on in terms of Arthur Smith and Raheem Morris. So it's something that I think change is probably going to come in Atlanta. I saw Raheem was trending on Twitter before we got on the show. I went scrolling through some of that, and there was a lot of people that are tired of Raheem Morris and are citing his record as a head coach and really ready for a change.
He's one of those guys like Brian Flores, who, if you put them in as a coordinator, they will kill you. If you put them in as a head coach, they will get killed. And again, nothing but love for Raheem. He's a good man. But, there's some people are meant to be head coaches, others are not. And I think his time has proven to be money. I mean, the moment he leaves Atlanta, he'll be hired as a defensive, either DC or some sort of maybe a linebackers coach or something. He won't be out of a job, is what I'm trying to say, for long. No. But it won't be as a head coach. So, we'll see. All right. Any last final thoughts before we get out of here?
Oh, No, not well. Actually, here, since we didn't touch on this, since I went off on the conference bias
Oh yeah, okay.
thing, it was another thing kind of in that subset that I wanted to touch on. Do not give Fernando Mendoza the Heisman based on that performance. His entire body of work has not been better of that as Julian Sayin and Ty Simpson. Both of them have been better this year. And I think the argument probably goes to he's doing less or he's doing more with less in terms of the talent that Indiana has on their roster. But I just really don't care. He has not been a better quarterback than Julian Sayin or Ty Simpson. Flat out, plain out, period. Doesn't matter. Both Sayin um, and Ty Simpson have wins that are comparable, I would say, especially Ty Simpson going on the road, beating Georgia in Athens.
Mm-hmm.
I think he will be in New York. I think he will deserve to be in New York, but he does not deserve to win it, especially not based on that performance alone last Saturday.
I also think, and this is an editorial comment from my standpoint, they don't pay any attention to the defense, or as much as they should.
Mm-mm, they don't.
I think there's a bunch of phenomenal defensive players, and you can go down a list of probably 10, any one of whom could, they're going to play on Sunday in the NFL, and they're going to be stars.
Oh yeah.
And from the day they step on the field, not having to basically work up to it. I think they overload on quarterbacks and running backs in the Heisman, which is why I don't particularly care for
Yeah. Hey,
so they won the Heisman. Great.
you want somebody that might deserve it as much as he does on that same Indiana football team. Look
Mhm.
no further than their Mike linebacker Aiden Fisher.
Mm-hmm.
He's been fantastic this
He's
year.
a beast,
Mm-hmm.
and he's going to be playing on Sundays, in the not too distant future.
Absolutely.
But there you go. All right, guys. Hope you had fun. We'll be back tomorrow around the same time, and enjoy tonight's Monday night game. Should be a pretty good one.
Absolutely.